All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Barker, the founder of Connector Elders, and this is the Connector Elders Empowering Aging podcast. I'm so happy to have with me today Carey Lindeman, the founder of Promise Care. When Carey and I reconnected, several weeks ago, we decided we wanted to get her on the podcast. And the topic that we're focusing on, we realized actually needs to be a three-part series. And so for the first part that we're going to be talking about today, we are going to have Carey share with us building a trusted team as life evolves. So this is an extremely important topic for anybody in the audience listening who is starting to find themselves asking, what am I going to do with mom, dad, or both of them? Or maybe you yourself are starting to wonder about, okay, I'm starting to notice that I'm feeling some struggles. What's my first step? The whole goal is to be proactive in this process. So that way you're not having to make decisions about your care under duress or during a moment of crisis. So Carey, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me, Sarah.
You're
really
welcome.
Happy to be here.
Well, before we dive in to the questions I have for you, could you please share with the audience who you are and why are you in senior care and your background of founding Promise Care?
Well, it's not typical. I am going to go back about 21 years, and I was taking some training with my church. It was a late care ministry training. They wanted me to do some senior outreach. It's not what my intent was when I was taking the training. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't really work with seniors well. I don't know anything about seniors. I'm not sure. So I decided that I'm gonna give it a go. That's what I was asked to do. That's where the need was. And I did. And I went into senior facilities and I started helping people. And it opened up a whole new world for me. I thought, these people, I love the senior population. They have so much to offer. They have done so much for society. It enlightened me and really opened up my world. So that's when I decided I was in the process of kind of deciding what I wanted to do. I wanted to start a business. And then I went forward to get more training and to open up my world a little bit more as to what senior care looked like. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started Promise Care, in-home care. And my focus was to give people what they want, to really let them tell me what it was they wanted in their life. I wanted to enhance their lives. I wanted people to grow old with dignity. And that's how I started.
To still feel a sense of autonomy, right, in making these decisions. So Carey, how did you decide to start a non-medical home care agency, right? Because there's a bunch of different ways that we're able to help seniors. How did you decide that it was going to be non-medical caregiving?
Well, I decided because I think what I wanted to do was really have the hands-on help. I did not want to come in with a checklist. I wanted it to be about relationships. Mm-hmm. I believe that the way we were going to do this and people were to get the kind of care that they really desired was to make it private pay. Mm-hmm. Did some research into insurance coverage and found that people really couldn't get what they wanted that way. And I remember having a couple of conversations with doctors and they said, avoid insurance. And so that's the route I went. And I'm still glad after 21 years that that's what I'm doing.
It's pretty fantastic. One last question before we dive into the topic questions, because I do know quite a few home care agency owners watch this podcast. So you founded Promise Care. Promise Care is successful. Do you have any advice for agency owners? Because we all can agree it is not the easiest business to have and run. So any advice for those that own an agency?
Yes, I think with me and my experience, it was about I don't have a medical background. I didn't have a nursing degree, although, I wish I would have, but that really had nothing to do with promise care. I think it was finding the people with heart, with, there might be some really good people out there, but if they don't have the heart and they don't follow your values,
Mm.
I think it makes it very difficult when you're working with people that don't follow your values. We kept small. We didn't have the desire to get huge because I feel like you kind of lose touch with people. Um, I liked going in, I liked visiting people. I liked, when we have a really, really close communication and close contact with our clients to make sure they're getting everything they need. And over this 21 years, I feel like it's, really, really done us, it's a good thing. I think it's great because your reputation holds up. You're, you're giving good care, you're doing the best you can, and the word does spread.
I could not agree more with that, Carey. So the intentional delivery of the care, and this is something we talk about a lot when we're coaching owners and or their marketers. So often slowing down and really connecting the dots about any additional resources that are needed, a quality assurance program, making sure that you're continuing to communicate with the client or the family pays dividends, right? Reputation, and it leads to more referrals versus just kind of a shotgun approach and just a super high level of activity. It has to be intentional and strategic. So thank you for sharing that. All right, audience, we are about to dive into part 1 of the series, and today's focus is going to be building a trusted team as life evolves. So, Carey, as we age, our needs change, sometimes gradually, sometimes overnight. From your perspective, why is it so important to build a trusted team before there is a crisis?
It's a good question, Sarah. I believe that it is not a sign of weakness to start talking about this. Could be even years ahead of when it might be needed. We never know. We never know. And I think that you don't want a crisis to hit, because we all know that in a crisis, we don't deal well. Families don't see eye to eye. They don't deal well. So to set it up ahead of time, knowing this is, doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be right, exactly, on spot on or anything. It just has to be, let's set up a plan. Let's set up, this is what we want. This is what is going to work. And I think things happen. If you just let it go and you keep kicking the can down the road and a crisis comes up and then all of a sudden they need help, or people, a fall occurs, or, I think when you're doing it early, you have options, you have clarity, you can get those relationships in place, and you respond thoughtfully instead of reactively. And it's just something that, again, it doesn't mean that you're going to die. It doesn't mean that anything's going to happen. It's just, let's just talk about what it might look like. And then one more thing is, because of the shortage of workers, I think the longer we have as a company, and others that I work with as well, the longer you have to put it together, get the right kind of people that you want, it just takes a little bit of time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Absolutely. So I'm a big fan of using the terminology proactive care planning. And I know home care agencies, right, where we're wanting to get all the referrals from the skilled nursing facility, all the referrals from the hospitals, the doctor's offices, home health, hospice, all of the referral source types, right? But those are often being sent when there is an imminent need, which is a good thing for an agency. But there's another approach to this that can be added, right? Really encouraging people in your operating community on the importance of proactive care planning, right? Is there any reason why a family could not reach out to Promise Care today if they heard this and say, my mom doesn't really need any help right now, but we would like to have a conversation with you about the reality of the future and talk about what care is? Because a lot of consumers still don't even know about home care, right? They don't know what it is. So my advice to agencies is, yes, they may not be a client for you tomorrow. It may not even be for 6 months to a year, but guess what? You are the agency that they know because you had a conversation with them and you did some proactive education and care planning.
Exactly.
And the family feels comfortable because when something does happen, they're already that much more prepared because they have a relationship with you.
Exactly. I'll tell you a story about a client we had, and I consider them to be pretty close to, just a great client, because it was a couple and they didn't need us right now. They could have done fine without us, but he was a professor, and he and his wife, she was an educator as well, and they were able to do everything on their own. They just wanted us there to help with the things that they didn't really like to do. They didn't want to spend energy making meals, grocery shopping, prepping food, cleaning up, doing light housekeeping. They wanted us to do that. And so we did. And they we weren't there every day. And the days that we weren't there, they would go out and get coffee together. They'd go out and have dinner. They'd go to the theater. And then we were there to help them, to save their energy. Mm-hmm. Well, fast forward, we spent 12 years with these people and kept them really healthy, actually, because we fed them great food. They didn't have to try to, rush through meals. They could relax. We prepped some beautiful meals for them, and they could enjoy that. And they were healthy. We accompanied them to the doctor. We knew, their health and their history. And so fast forward, the wife ended up having to go into a facility, and he took a room there, and he had a scooter, and he would go and visit her every day. And he eventually sold his condominium and moved there. And we were with them until he was 96, and he ended up dying there. But he did not ever want to let us go, because we were part of the team. We were part of helping him. We knew his history. So it's a great story, because they did it early, and they got used to it. And when they really, really got sick, and when they really, really needed it, we were there to help them.
Absolutely. And it shows the progression, right, of the aging journey, to be there with minimal needs. And then, right, over time, they had the relationship with you, the trusting relationship. And so as needs increased, so did the level of support. I also think, and I'm speaking directly to consumers, right, adult children, potential seniors that are needing some support, it's good for you to get proactively educated on the agencies in your community that you may want to work with, because if in the event something happens and you get admitted to the hospital, that hospital team is going to have their favorite agencies that they're going to funnel you towards, but you don't know any of them yet, right?
Or they funnel you towards a facility, and you may not want to go into a facility.
Exactly. So there are and I don't want to belabor this too much, but it is such So it's just because people don't know, right? Like
Right.
my mom doesn't know that she can choose where she gets her care support from. It's always about, well, whatever the case manager told me, whatever the social worker told me. Now that's good, right? Home care agencies, you want to develop those relationships and you want them to send you the flow. But there's another angle to this too, which is educating the people in your community on your agency, so that way when something does happen, they are literally requesting you upon
Yes,
discharge.
exactly. And many, many times we can be an advocate also.
Mm-hmm. Throughout the entire process.
Yes.
Okay, so when you think about an aging support team, who should people be thinking beyond doctors and caregivers? So what other people or professions should be on that aging support team?
Well, I believe that, as we spoke, an advocate or someone, and we do this where we will work with people to help them identify different people in the community. So we will be, we will draw out the map. We'll, show them the way, so to speak. It's not always home care, but educating them on home care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, bring in your financial people.
Mm-hmm.
They can also be good advisors. I think, estate planners, excellent people to bring in. Get to know even adult day centers, because that can be part of a team as well. They're great. And there may be times when, people want that. They need it. They need the social aspect.
With their peers.
With their peers, they may want to stay at home, but a few hours a day at an adult day is great. They could still then be at home, but
So
have that social aspect, because the social aspect is just incredibly important.
everything you're saying is music to my ears, from involving the financial planner to the attorney. So let's say, you're talking to a family and they say, yes, I have an advanced healthcare directive. Yes, I have my POAs. Yes, I've done an estate plan. Maybe they have a trust. If they did it 30 years ago, it's probably time for it to be reviewed.
Absolutely should be reviewed every 5 years, probably. That's
100%.
what I've heard from attorneys we work with. The other thing is people may have long-term care insurance and they don't understand what it means. They don't understand that there's money right there that they can use. They got money in a bucket that's just waiting to be used. We can help with that as well. And people out there that can.
Exactly. You've been doing this a long time. I haven't been in this work as long as you have, Carey, but I can recall numerous situations in which I was working a situation, right, doing the intake, the assessment, and the senior themselves didn't think that they had a long-term care insurance policy, or they'd forgotten about it, right? And so really making sure that we pull back the layers and ask maybe just another question. Even if they say no, ask another question to see if maybe it's something that was forgotten about. And I love your point about when there is a policy, not really understanding it. This is something that home care agencies have been doing for a long time, right? Is looking at the policy, explaining it to the care recipient or the family member, depending on, where the care recipient is in their journey. But we really need to make sure that financial planners and these law firms and anybody working with older clients knows that this is really a complimentary service that home care agencies offer, which is a policy.
Right. That's right.
Okay. One last thing before we move on to the next. You mentioned adult daycare. And this is something relatively new for me, which is encouraging the collaboration between home care agencies and adult daycare centers. I think sometimes a home care agency does not want to encourage that because they feel like, well, if they go to the adult day, it's going to take hours from us, right? But we really need to be looking at the senior and deciding what is the best care plan for this person right? So a combination of care within the home, but maybe they're a very extroverted person and they really thrive in interaction. So don't be afraid to make the recommendation of, here's the care plan with us, but we do think it would be beneficial for your dad to also spend a couple days at this day program so that way he can interact with his peers. Now, I shared that with the audience because if you are a consumer, somebody that needs to explore care, that should be something that you're talking to the agency. That is part of your vetting process. That will tell you a lot about, are they looking at your family member as the whole human being and constructing a care plan with that in mind? Or is it just about selling you as many hours as they want?
Correct. And our philosophy has always been humanity and grace and, collaborative communication. And we want to make the best life. We want to enhance everyone's life. So it doesn't have to be just us. And, you need a team. I really believe you need several people.
Mm-hmm.
We work with PT and OT as well, having them come in, which is great as well. So we will help with any exercises, any recommendations they have, because we know movement is key.
Mm-hmm.
And, what do they say? Sitting is the new smoking. I mean, we don't want our people to sit unless they absolutely have to, of course. But if they can move even a little bit, that's really important. So it's all about building a team. I can't stress that enough. I think it's just so important. It isn't just one person coming in every day. You need to do things that are going to activate your mind, your body. You have to have good nutrition. I mean, this takes several people to advise on all of this.
It does. And you were mentioning the therapy team, right?
Yes.
We can become an extension of that. It's about taking, okay, here's our care plan for them. Here's their care plan for them. And how do we support each other? How do we merge those care plans together? And home care is such a unique service because we're able to be an extension of other people's plans and help them reach the outcomes that they're going for, which is beneficial to the senior. So collaboration, teamwork. Yes. All right, Carey, many families try to do everything themselves until burnout hits. What do you see happen when people wait too long to bring experts into the picture?
A lot of resentment, and they may resent that they have to do everything themselves, and then they're mad at themselves because they're resentful. And the other thing is, I think it's family. I mean, the family has to work together. It isn't always that way. It totally isn't that way, but let's, designate who might be the best to do this. So there is burnout, and what I can advise is, I think, again, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think there are resources out there. I mean, we can be a resource just for advice, but there are, and we can guide people to resources, to support groups, training. There's certain training, and we as a company are developing a training program for family caregivers. I mean, we probably won't charge much for it because it's really a service that people need to know. If they jump into something, I mean, we're not trained on everything. We can't, I'm not trained to be an attorney. I can't, give advice on that or try to give people legal counsel. We have to call on the people that are trained to help us.
Right. We have a lot of family members that are thrust into the role of being a caregiver, right? But they haven't received any actual training on caregiving, right? Caregiving, there's the heart, there's being there, there's, certain things that maybe they know how to do, but how many family caregivers actually know how to effectively change the Depends, or know how to use a Hoyer lift, or know how to safely do transfers, right?
That's right.
So,
it can be, you have to pray that it's going to work, but they'd feel much better if they knew the correct mechanics of it so they don't hurt themselves.
I think it's very impactful that you brought up the topic of resentment that happens, right, for family members. And I've seen this happen a lot. The intention is not to become resentful on their part, even if there is the best relationship between, let's say, daughter and mom, right? They want to be doing the caregiving, but resentment creeps in just because they get so overwhelmed and so exhausted. And then in situations where there's multiple siblings, right? It's usually one sibling carrying the bulk of the responsibility. I really urge anybody in the audience, if you are having those feelings, it's not that you're not wanting to provide the care. You're just overly exhausted. So reach out to a home care agency wherever you live and just have a conversation about support. Even if you don't move forward, a good agency is still going to validate your experience. And I find a lot of times they're not feeling validated. The struggle, the journey has been so long for some of these family caregivers, Carey.
Well, they feel like they feel alone. They feel very, very alone. And if I don't have the exact number, but right now there are hundreds of thousands of family caregivers trying to care for their parents. Plus, not only their parents, but they have their own children. So they're having to run, to the kids' soccer game and then maybe back over to mom and dad's later to help with some things. And it's overwhelming. And it isn't, and it has nothing to do with your love. It has nothing to do with your commitment to your parents. It's overwhelming. We aren't trained to do this naturally. This is the first time we've dealt with it. And we want to help people be that caregiver for their parents the best they can, and to call on some of those outside resources, which they don't have the time to even look up, check out. And when you Google something, you get nothing anyway. You really don't get a good answer. But there are resources. And I think there are community resources that people, just don't tap into as much as they should. And it has to do a lot with time availability.
I agree. We in the industry, it's pretty common to talk about as someone ages, their world gets smaller and smaller, right? Their friends start to pass away, family passes away, they start to experience some limitations that makes the world smaller and smaller. Something that my team and I, right, when we're working with people, we've been encouraging them to also talk about, which is the family caregivers world also tends to get smaller and smaller and smaller, right? The care recipients world, because of the aging journey, the progression of whatever disease, but we're not talking enough about how that family caregivers world also, due to the family caregiver journey, becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So both senior and family caregiver, as the world gets smaller, isolation. And we know isolation can lead to depression, and we know depression can manifest in the body. So we really need people to start reaching out more proactively for some support, because we can hopefully prevent that from happening.
In the US, it's a little bit different. Other countries have this kind of figured out where they live close to each other. A lot of times they live in the same dwelling and they can help each other. And it's not what it's like here. I mean, everyone lives far from each other. And we teach our children more than anything to be independent when they're young. Go off and do what you need to do and make a success out of yourself and move away if you want to. But there comes a time when we need our kids again. And they're called back, and it's tough. It's really tough. So I think it's, keep that, it takes a village mindset. And there are resources. I'm here to tell you there are resources, not always obvious, but they are there.
They are. How does having the right team in place help older adults maintain independence longer?
Well, I think having the right team, it keeps them active. It keeps them fresh, I would have to say. I mean, family's really important. And, I know we've had clients that feel like they want their family there all the time helping. It's not always good for the family. And I had a conversation the other day. We're just downsizing someone's house. And the dad said, well, why can't you guys help? The daughters were sitting there. They said, Dad, we can't. We'll pay for it. It's not something that we want to do. And here's my thing is be a daughter, be a son. That's what we want, is to have your kids not be your caregiver, or your spouse not be your caregiver. That's not why you married somebody. That's not why you had kids. You don't want them to be your caregiver. You want them as your children or your spouse. And I think having that third party come in, they're trained professionally. They keep, a lot of the burden falls on the caregivers, the workers, but that's what they're trained to do. And it's not the family members that are trained to do this.
Right.
And they have another role.
To be son, daughter, spouse. This brings up a couple of points here. Often, right, when an older adult is approached about receiving some support, right, through a caregiving service agency, the feeling is, I am losing independence, or there is rebellion simply because the adult child is not approaching the conversation correctly. And this is where home care agencies come in and provide some coaching to the adult children on how to have these conversations. But anybody listening, if you're thinking about care for yourself or your loved one, remember, home care is absolutely not about taking independence away. It is very much about extending independence, right? Supporting the independence of an older adult.
Exactly. We had a woman who loved to entertain, and she just couldn't do it anymore. And what we did is we arranged every so often, all of her friends come over, and we were going to have lunch. We would set the table with her china that she loved. We would make food. She would have her friends over. She could mingle. She could have fun with them, and we would help do the cleanup. And it was great. So it's those kinds of things, what they love to do. And if they, we take people out all the time if they're able. There's certain games, there's certain books, there's certain things. We make sure that they may get a book on audio. If they don't want to read, we try to enhance their life, not in the way we see fit, but in what they like, what their hobbies were, what their interests are.
This is key. And it starts with doing a thorough assessment. Just last week, I was doing a training, and we were very much focusing on, we understand, yes, you want efficiencies in your home care agency, right? You want people to use their time wisely and be efficient in this process. But I really, really advocate agencies to slow down and do a thorough in-person assessment in which it's not just about the ADL needs, the activities of daily living. And for any consumers listening, if you're interviewing multiple agencies, you need to be looking for this sort of approach, not transactional, just focused on the ADL needs and how many days per week and how many hours. They need to be asking questions about, who is your mom? What did your mom do as a profession? What kind of music does mom like? Does mom like to cook? Maybe she can't cook all the way anymore, but that's something that the care professional can do with her to whatever her current ability is. So Carey, I love hearing that you guys create true customized care plans.
And the cooking part is really, I think, important. They may have loved it versus sitting and watching the caregiver make a meal. There are ways to involve them.
100%. I use this example a lot, usually when I'm talking about this. The client may not be able to completely follow a recipe anymore, right? Or they can't do certain things in cooking that they used to. But can the care professional engage them in the process where maybe they're pouring the stuff into the measuring cup, and then client, right, mom, is still pouring it into the larger bowl, right? So some level of participation.
Exactly.
I love it.
And they feel a sense of accomplishment.
Right.
Like they've done something. Like my life still, holds value.
Meeting people where they are in their aging journey, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Just because somebody starts accepting some support doesn't mean that they can't do anything anymore. The other thing that because I'm interested in your take on this, Carey. Sometimes I've noticed that there's a resistance to accepting care. So let's take an example of, it's a husband. He is the family caregiver to his spouse that has dementia. Adult children are really putting the pressure on, Dad, you need some help. We're arranging for these assessments and you're going to talk to 3 agencies, right? They're forcing him. So the approach in that assessment, right? I've seen this and experienced it before when doing assessments. The resistance is happening because an agency is coming in and saying, we can do this and we can do that and we can do that. And there's been no real conversation with the spouse, the family caregiver, about, what do you enjoy doing to support your wife? What are the things you really don't want to do? We can't assume that family caregiver wants to hand over everything. And in this example, wife has dementia, husband is the family caregiver. Maybe he wants to keep washing his wife's hair because that is the only time he still feels there's a connection between the two of them. So when an agency comes in and assumes that he wants us to do the bathing, there's resistance that happens because we're telling versus asking him what he wants.
I think that's really, really important to recognize, because you don't want to come in and strip them of all of the things that are meaningful to them. Mm-hmm. I would suggest, and what we do is we make it a very slow process. Mm-hmm. We don't say, we're coming in 5 days a week and we're going to take over all these things. We don't do that. We talk to him about working together, and we will start slowly. Mm-hmm. And I always say, you're in the driver's seat. If something doesn't go right, if it's a person you don't click with, we can change that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so important. Another example of not rushing and really involving them in the conversation. So we know the generation that we work with, and we know typically the woman has done the cooking and cleaning, right? So now she has her husband that she's also being the caregiver for, but you can't go in as an agency and assume that she wants to turn over all the housekeeping into all the cooking to you. Maybe that's something that she still wants to do, which is make the meals for her husband, because that's still her way of loving in this situation, you know? But there's other things that we can do that would alleviate the burden on her.
Yes. And that is true. There are so many things. And we want to save her energy. I try to tell people, you know, all of us only have so much energy. And we want you, the wife, caring for your husband that may have dementia or has some sort of an illness possibly, that we want you around. It's really important. I've seen this happen too many times where the caregiver ends up passing before the person that they're caring for. And that's super hard. And it's something that we try to gently say, let's go slow, but we want to save your energy. And it usually happens. They try it, they go slow, and within a couple of weeks, they've increased their care because they can see where that's a support for them. We're not taking away, we're not taking everything away at all. We're just doing the things that maybe she feels she has to do. And, you know, someone else can easily take it over.
I agree. What role does community play in staying vibrant as we age, not just physically, but emotionally and socially?
I believe it's, and I've said that in our philosophy, it's all about the relationships, because the studies that I've done, we can go in and we can do the checklist, and we can change the sheets, and we can make the meals, and we can do everything. It's really about the relationship with us and the people around them. You know, is it the family dog that they want to see? And this is staying at home. It's great because you can have your grandchildren coming over anytime. You can have the animals coming over to visit. You can get out and visit with neighbors. We can walk, you know, a little bit around the neighborhood, even if it's just 1 block and back. And again, we have seen that to be extremely important. It's just the relational piece is so important. I remember this was our first client, and I went over, I was filling in for someone. So I'm running around doing all the things on, you know, the notes that they do on a day-to-day basis. I'm making her dinner. You know, I kind of, you know, picked at a couple things in the kitchen while I was making the dinner, eating. I served her dinner, and then I went to clean up the kitchen, and she said, "What did you make for yourself?" And I said, "Well, I just was, you know, I had little nibbles in the kitchen." And she said, "Would you put a plate together and come and sit with me?" And I thought, that's exactly the philosophy that I had in starting this company. And here you are telling me I'm not doing it, which is exactly right. I'm not doing it. And that was a lesson to me that it's built about its relationships that we've built this company on. And that's the most important thing. And we would also tell caregivers, of course, you do the necessary things. If you don't get to changing the sheets, if you don't get to that load of laundry, it's more important that you communicate, that you play a game if that's what they want to do. You don't have, you know, do the laundry the next time.
Yes, connectedness. We are human beings. Now, some of us need more connection than others, but at the end of the day, are we not like a tribal people? Like,
I think
quality of life is so much
exactly
based on feeling connected to others.
And even introverts, you know, if they say my mom's an introvert, That's okay. We're not going to send somebody super chatty over there, but there's a need for connection.
Mm-hmm. Right. The care. Maybe this is a good way to sum it up. Care is not transactional. Care should not just be focused on checking tasks off the list. That's part of the job.
Absolutely not.
But real care also is focused on connection, facilitating connection. Okay, so this is the big one. How do you help families understand that accepting support doesn't mean giving up control or independence?
Well, how I like to do that is with stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think, is having the stories of the people that, we've worked with, and other stories that I know of people that, it's starting very, very small. I can talk all day long about how we do business and how we care for people, but I think you have to try it, and you see how it really eases so many things. It gives peace of mind. Mm-hmm. It gives peace of mind, and I think everybody's resistant.
It's funny. I talk about this all the time as part of when we're teaching the academy, and I ask people to raise their hand. And it's like, has any student in this academy ever experienced somebody who says, yes, yippee, I cannot wait to have people I don't know coming into my home and taking care of me? In all the years I've been doing this, I have never experienced that. There's gratitude after it starts or they get used to it, but usually the senior is not extremely excited about it.
No, because to them it's a message, and they don't like the message. They'd rather force, or not force, but they would rather it be difficult and get through it on their own than to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they find that they do ask for help, if they just say, all right, I'm going to do it, I'm going to try it. Again, within just a couple weeks, we're upping hours because they're finding that it isn't as bad as they thought it was going to be.
Well, they get nervous. I mean, I think about it. I try to put myself in the shoes, which is, even if it's a great agency, you've done a great job through the process, they trust you. Until those caregivers are in the home, right? There's still a discomfort and awkwardness of, strange people coming into your home, right? I mean, people get anxiety before they go on first dates. People get anxiety when they go to conferences where they may not know anybody. So now try to envision bringing somebody that's going to be one-on-one with you in the comfort of your own home that you've not met before. But a good agency will make sure that there's robust conversations and reassurance. And to your point, Carey, kind of starting slow and understanding that this is awkward.
That's right. It is. And we know that. And we're trying out, even, with technology, just to ease people into it. Because again, we understand it's not easy. It'll enhance your life. I can pretty much guarantee that it will, but you can't tell somebody that.
Right. They have to feel it.
You can't, because again, this is your sacred private space. Mm-hmm. And here you go. I've got somebody coming in. What does that mean for my life?
Mm-hmm. Well, and you've been doing this a long time, so I'm sure you've seen it. Initially, when care will start, there are situations in which maybe the well spouse, the wife, feels like they have to entertain the caregiver. They have to wait on the caregiver, right? Because that's
their guest.
Yes, exactly. And I think these are a lot of things that people don't often talk about. Okay, moving on. Are there common mistakes you see families make when building their care or support team?
I would say the biggest mistake, is waiting too long.
Mhm.
And the other thing is talking to friends, saying, "Oh, my friend did this with her parents, so that means I'm going to." That's a mistake.
Mhm. Because their parents are not the same people,
They're not
right?
the same people. Every family is different. People, financially, people are different. Their needs are different. Their conditions are different. I I believe that we want to rely on our friends. That's not the point. We do want to rely on our friends. We tend to do that naturally. I think we have to kind of go beyond that and do the research. Talking to professionals, I would suggest doing versus your friend.
Exactly. And we know, right? And for any potential receivers of care support, you can reach out to a caregiving agency like Promise Care. You don't have to pay to have a conversation with
No,
these professionals
no,
about your options.
no. I have spoken with people even in other states that have just questions. Where do I start? What do I
Right.
do?
Right. So we encourage you to reach out if you're even remotely starting to have these questions, right? Even if your mom or dad isn't going to need care for a couple of years, start getting educated now. That is like the whole moral of this conversation right now is proactively start building your care team. How do you encourage older adults to participate in choosing their team instead of having decisions made for them?
Always encourage them, if they're able, to be a part of the conversation. I have found that it's a relief for the kids to have the conversation with the parent involved
Mhm.
because they have good questions and it's directly affecting them. And so I think it's extremely important. We may want to have a pre-conversation with the family. A lot of times the families will say, well, this is, what's going on. You don't have to involve the parent in necessarily all of that. And then have a meeting, in-person meeting with the parents, and they can then ask questions and express, their feelings about it all.
Yes, because sometimes, right, the parent, the aging adult, is not going to share certain things in front of their children,
That's
right? We
right.
have a role reversal situation going on. This is interesting. It was just a couple of weeks ago. I was doing an intake call and I was listening to the dynamics of the situation. And so I made the professional recommendation that the daughter not be present for the in-person assessment because simply and the person still has capacity, right? It's a husband wife situation. The husband
Hmm.
is going to be making the decisions, but doesn't he's not reacting well to the adult children telling him what he has to do for his wife. And so what I explained in this situation was uh, it's probably going to create more resistance if the adult children are there when the home care agency is having their conversation with the husband about care options, because just psychologically they're going to push back because it will feel like by the presence of the children that they're telling him he has to do this.
Lots of dynamics.
Absolutely.
Lots and lots of dynamics. One thing I just wanted to mention that is an idea that I think sometimes people don't think of it. Either you may have kids that want to do caregiving for their parents, but they don't have time to do full time. Or people may have a long-term care insurance policy. What we have done is we have hired the children as employees. And what that does is, they work with, insurance, they work with a license, which is all under us. And then it's the great training that they get as well. And the parents, know this is happening, and so versus paying someone, all from the agency, which is fine. I mean, but sometimes those kids are also paid, but they're part of the team. They're part of the team. And then when those kids want to go on vacation or they need a day off or they need something, we're there as a company to fill that void.
What a beautiful approach, Carey, and something that isn't often thought of. Maybe it's happening more than what I'm aware of, but so you guys actually will present that as an option in.
Yes. With, people that have kids that, right now they may have like this one family, they have 3 daughters and they were taking turns.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still too much. It wasn't their, there's a lot of things they didn't know, and it was still a lot of time. And she had a long-term care insurance policy. And what we ended up doing is hiring the kids, and they went through our training, and they didn't have to worry about taking care of her full time, but they did what they could.
Mm-hmm.
Whether, I don't know what it ended up being, but, maybe they all did 1 day a week. And then we have our company caregivers do the rest, but everybody's on the same page. In other words,
I love the approach
with the care plan and so forth.
But that started with a full-on robust discussion about how do you want to design the specific solution for you guys, right?
Right.
In your experience, what does a truly well-coordinated aging support team look like when it's working well?
Well, depends on the number of hours, but I think I want to say that it's your outside care providers, that are specifically trained for whatever the condition is. Mm-hmm. Your family. And I think then you also have your team of doctors, medical people, and so forth. Mm-hmm. And we have a nurse on staff, and I think she's really important as well, for making sure medications are set up properly and making sure that that's all being done. And then also, I think, the nutrition piece is extremely important, and we can do that. Or again, they may have somebody on the outside doing that, whoever is that gifted, with good nutrition. I think that's extremely important. And I think exercise.
Mm-hmm. Moving.
So if it's somebody that has, mobility issues, we can get advice again from, our PT, or, and it isn't they have to come in. We work with them. We work with them as to what's going to be best, our physical therapist, what's going to be best for this client. And then we work with them.
Yeah. So any family members or seniors listening or that will watch the recording of this, what we're talking about is how we, non-medical home care, we can be collaborators in care, right? We can collaborate if you're receiving any sort of support through a skilled home health agency, right? The type of care that's covered by your insurance, we can collaborate with them. If anybody's listening and you have a loved one currently receiving hospice care and you need a break, right? We are collaborators in care working with hospice for your loved one. Okay. So I think that's the beauty of home care is we're able to collaborate with any resource on the continuum.
Exactly. And I just want to say one thing about hospice as well is I would say hospice is a very important service to start as soon as you are able, because waiting until the end isn't always a good, option. And they're not there all the time. So again, working with them, we team with the hospice all the time and helping fill the gaps.
Well, and that brings up a good point is, too often, and this is just a result of people not knowing what they don't know, right? Which is the assumption that if there's an order for home health, that those team members, that staff is going to be there more often, or that, oh, my mom's on hospice, they're going to be here 24/7, right? There's still a lot of people that don't realize that's not the case, right?
It's educating on both, the home health after coming out of the hospital, how much time they're there. It's not round the clock, and a hospice is not there round the clock.
Right. If someone listening today wanted to start building their village, what's the first step you would recommend?
I think the first step that I would recommend would be there's community resources, A, and B, your home. I think your home, a smaller home healthcare agency in your community can be extremely helpful.
And as a reminder to those in the audience, don't delay in reaching out to your local non-medical caregiving agency, right? It goes by multiple terms, right? Non-medical home care, caregiving agency, private duty care agency. But don't delay in reaching out, because if you have any fear that you can't call them because you might have to pay for their time to have a conversation with you, let's go ahead and just dispel that fear right now. They will talk to you about your situation. So don't delay.
My feeling is if you get the feeling that they're trying to wrap it up and force you into being a client and it doesn't feel right and it's uncomfortable, then I would say no.
There's plenty of agencies, right, Carey?
Go on. I also have developed a 25-question when you're talking to someone for care for your loved one. These are the questions you should ask.
So Carey, how can people get in touch with you? So anybody that's been watching live or will see the recording of this, how could they reach out to you to learn more about Promise Care? Where is Promise Care located, by the way, for everybody in the audience, in case they're actually located where you operate and they want to have a conversation?
Minneapolis area.
Okay. And then, guys, she mentioned, even if you're not located in Minneapolis, but you really liked what she had to share today, let's say you live in New Jersey and you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to Carey. Between she and I, if you live in another part of the country and want to be connected to an agency like Carey's agency, Promise Care, we can definitely get you connected with some reputable providers. Carey, how can people contact you?
Carey, Carey, at promisecareinc.com.
Perfect.
So it's promisecareinc.com.
Carey, thank you so much for being my guest today, talking about. You're welcome. So for everybody listening, the next part in our series with Carey Lindeman, founder of Promise Care, is going to be focused on home care trends, innovation, and the village model. Thank you for tuning in today, and we will see you at the next part. Thank you, Carey.
Thank you, Sarah.